Good afternoon, everybody here in Grand Rapids, in Fargo, and online. Appreciate you all guys being here. This is the February 17th, 2024 Northland chapter of the Mutual UFO Network's public meeting. Glad to have you all here. Today's guest is going to be Kathleen Marden. I'm sure most of you have probably heard of her. She's the niece of Betty and Barney Hill. She's going to be here after the break, and her presentation today is going to be UFOs Are Real, the history and the evidence. I'm really looking forward to it. Should be good. She's a really nice person. I know her real well. If you guys have a guest you'd like to see, and I sent out that little survey thing there for you guys to fill out, what you like, what you don't like. If there's any guests that you guys would really like to see, let us know, because this is your chapter too. It's not just mine, not just Anna. This is all of ours chapters. So, let's make it a good one, and let's get some good guests here. But the guests, we can get guests here that you guys like, then that just makes it that much better. So say something. Let's say thank you to our sponsors. Actually, Michelle, who's not here today, has sponsored last month and this month. She sponsored the Zoom meeting right here. She also sponsored the room rental here at Rapids, and because the one in Fargo was free. And she also did the joke of the month for two months running, which is awesome. Thank you very much, Michelle. Wish you were here. So maybe next time, we'll see. All right, so I want to thank everybody that's helped with donations and stuff. And speaking of donations, we got a donation jar in the back next to the snacks. Fargo area, you guys got a donation jar there too. And if you're online, you can go to the website, or when you guys get home, you can go to the website, and you can donate from there. We also accept Venmo, which is kind of a nice thing. So yeah, how can you donate? You can here in person in the back, Venmo, website, or you can just donate your time. We got some stuff coming up in July. I'm going to be in Reamer at Bigfoot Days. We're going to try to have a table set up there just to kind of get the word out and everything. So if you want to volunteer some of your time for there too, that'd be awesome. Okay, a few announcements. Sign up for the door prize. It's in the back. Little tiny pieces of paper, put them in the box, just like last time. We also have a clipboard back there for an email list if you want to get on the email list, which you'll get monthly announcements, and not just for Northland, but also for Minnesota MUFON. So Minnesota MUFON has their meetings on the second Saturday of the month. We're going to have ours either on the 3rd or the 4th. We don't have that set yet. So you can enjoy both. Yes, sir, you got a question? Or? Yes, Minnesota. Well, yeah, we're going to get down to that here in a minute. That's okay. Yeah, Minneapolis, they meet down in Minneapolis and New Brighton. And of course, up here in the Northland, we meet here today. And then Fargo area, they're at the Fargo Library today. Also, I want to thank everybody there in North Dakota. The members in North Dakota went from 7 to 13, which is awesome, almost doubled. It's just amazing, because for the longest time, they didn't have a chapter. So the membership there in North Dakota declined a lot, but we've just managed to double it, and that's great. For all you field investigators out there, the CMS, which is our case management system, which is if you report a UFO, it goes to that, or if you report an abduction or something like that, it goes into the case management system. That report gets sent to the state director, and the state director sends it out to the field investigators. Unfortunately, they're doing a move from an old server to a new server, and the code is kind of old, and it locked up. So I've been locked up now for about 2 weeks. They're working on it, but it's a slow thing. Next month for us here, we will not be here at the Y. We're going to be over at the VFW, which is on Highway 2 on the northwest side of town. You don't have to be a member, obviously, to be there, but yeah, you don't have to be a member. The only problem with the VFW right now is they don't have speakers. So we got to get that figured out. Donations to help us buy speakers would be awesome. The ones I was looking at was like $140 a piece. I think we need at least 2. If you guys are smart on that kind of stuff, I'll listen to you, whatever you got to say, because I'm not an AV expert by any stretch of the imagination. We can use all the help we can get, but I do know that we're going to need speakers over there. I also want to thank several people, because I don't do this by myself. Anna's over in Fargo. Thank you, Anna, for everything that you do. You are awesome. Sherry, she's in the western side. She's our secretary. Larry, he's in the back, helping run Zoom. Thank you, Larry. Really appreciate everything you do. And Charles, over there in Fargo, thank you very much for what you're doing too. Field investigators. Check out, please, the all-new MUFON University. It's just been revamped. They had an old system for a while. It was okay, wasn't that great? But the new system is absolutely amazing. They got stuff on there, astronomical data, air traffic ID, identifying satellites, how to do a witness interview, photo analysis, and that's just all under the field investigator level 1. There are 3 field investigator levels training that you got to go through. And that's just under field investigator 1. The 2 and 3 I haven't been able to get into yet because it's so new. I finished up the field investigator 1, but the state director had sent my diploma or whatever, my certificate to headquarters MUFON. They just got to open up the field investigator 2 stuff for me, and they haven't done that yet. But when they do, I'll let you guys know what's on that. So MUFON University, it's great for the field investigators. Field investigator training. Yes, we want to start field investigator training. We did it a little bit with Minnesota MUFON, but we haven't done it yet here. Not sure how it's going to look. Is it going to be like a monthly thing? Is it going to be quarterly? Are we going to do it via Zoom? We can do it before a meeting, after a meeting? No idea. Field investigator, speak up. If you want to be a field investigator, speak up. Whatever you guys think would be great. And we'll have topics, you know, aviation data identification, how to secure and collect samples, interview process, kind of how that works, and lots of other things. And again, suggestions. We're always open to suggestions because I've said it before, I'll say it again. This is your chapter, not just mine. And together we can make this chapter work really well. Okay. And speaking of field investigators, congratulations to Charles, our newest field investigator. That's you over there in Fargo. And this is your certificate right there. And we're going to swap over to Anna.
On behalf of Jerry and I, we would like to present you with this nice little certificate and thank you for becoming our very first field investigator of Northland MUFON.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Charles.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Awesome. Okay. Field investigator tip of the month. Always try to verify your witness. And a good way to do that is white pages. You can do a reverse number lookup to make sure that's the person that reported it. You can look up the address, or you can just look up the name. And you do want to do this to verify that the person that made the report is the person that you're talking to. Understanding that sometimes people will put a fake name on there just because they want to be anonymous. And that's okay. You know, that's fine. But if you do the, you know, if you try to verify and it's a different name, different number, and you've tried to contact them 3 times, you got to contact them 3 times, and you haven't heard anything, it's probably a hoax. So just read the narrative, figure it out. If you have any questions, we're here to help everybody. So that's the tip of the month. Verify your witness. Okay, MUFON. MUFON's mission statement: Mutual UFO Network, obviously has been around since 1969. Global organization dedicated to the scientific study of UFOs for the benefit of humanity. And there are 3 goals that MUFON does: investigate UFOs, sightings, collect data for the MUFON database for use by researchers worldwide, promote research on UFOs to discover the true nature of the phenomena with an eye towards scientific breakthroughs and improving life on our planet, and of course, educating the public on the UFO phenomena and its impact, potential impact on society. Well, speaking of collecting data, what's the use of collecting data if you're just going to hoard it and not use it? So MUFON, finally, because I asked this question a couple of years ago, it's like, okay, all this information's coming in. Is anybody looking at it? Is anybody trying to correlate it? You know, what's going on? Well, just recently, MUFON started this project. Well, they didn't start it recently. They just finished it recently. Ongoing thing, but got it set up for everybody. Project Aquarius. And what Project Aquarius is, it's got the 7 different sections there. As you can see, it kind of looks like doors. And there's collections from private researchers. There's a witness sketch gallery, a news clippings gallery, Mars, which we will get into in a minute because I don't remember what that stands for, UFO report maps, historical journal collections, and historical symposium proceedings. One of these doors, I believe it's the newspaper clippings, is open for anybody. You don't have to purchase Project Aquarius. Otherwise, it's a $50 a year thing to get into, but the information is amazing that's on there. So the collections from private researchers, you have the humanoid category, MJ12 files, MUFON file cabinet, MUFON SAT, which is special assignment teams, white papers, Bob Pratt files, Captain Ruppelt files, the John Warren files, and soon to be Craig Lang files. Craig Lang was a big person in Minnesota MUFON. He was a state director. He was also a field investigator. And he passed away, unfortunately, a few years ago, but he has a huge collection of UFO investigative stuff. And that's should be headed to Cincinnati soon. So this here is just an example of the witness sketch gallery. As you can see, you kind of got the craft up on top and that beam right there sucking some people up, which people have reported often, actually. So that's just kind of an example of that. Then you got the news clippings gallery. This right here is talk about a battleship UFO that burns off interceptor jets. That was RAF UFO, or RAF, happened over in Britain. So anyhow, that is a example of that. The MUFON Archives Research and Reporting System. Okay, so this is what Project Aquarius started as, was this research and reporting system where they started digitizing all their information and trying to put it in one spot for everybody to take a look at it. Well, as they got into it, they realized, well, there's a lot more of this than just all of this. So they started to separate it, make it a little bit easier to research the database. So this actually has old newspaper clippings here. Well, okay, I guess all I got in here is just a couple of newspaper clippings, but there's a whole bunch of stuff in there. Sighting reports in here. There's old other type of reports. It's a lot of stuff. It's really good. It's amazing the amount of information that's in here. The UFO report map. It's obviously not out yet. It's scheduled to launch between April and Memorial Day. It's an interactive multi-level map containing all of MUFON's 135,000 plus cases. Yes, you read that right. 135,000 plus cases. In fact, they're probably pretty close to about 136,000 now that are mappable in the database, along with videos and photos. And that's only one level of 5 levels. So there are the MUFON cases in level 1, the NICAP cases, which is the National, forgive me, I don't remember, USO cases, unidentified submersible objects, Swedish and Norwegian cases. Anyhow, Swedish and Norwegian cases, we're going to get one of those guys to come over here or to via Zoom and be one of our presenters. Going to be great. Larry Hatch database. Larry was the first research computer that create a computerized database during the early days of DOS. You know that had to have been a major pain in the butt, but he did that. So he's got his stuff on here too. Historical journey or historical journal collection, all the way from volume 1, issue 1 in September 1967 to December 2010. And then the symposium's proceedings all the way from 1971 to 2023. So lots and lots and lots of stuff, and they're well worth $50. Definitely well worth it. Did I mention educating the public? Well, I think I sure did. So if you know a group that would enjoy a presentation, like church groups or book clubs or Eagle or Moose Club or Rotary clubs, science clubs, social clubs, schools, Boys and Girl Scouts, or any other group that would enjoy a presentation, just let us know. We'll try to get that set up. MUFON membership. Okay, so there's a difference between MUFON membership and Northland MUFON membership. MUFON membership, MUFON.com, has several different memberships. They have the basic, which is the e-journal, which is an electronic form of the journal, obviously. Plus, you get a membership card, e-journal, email updates, access to members only section of the website, access to the Observers Network, which is the MUFON social media site for members only, and access to the ever-evolving graphical map. Now, you can't get a hard copy of the journal, which I get because I hate looking at things on the computer. I'd rather have a piece of paper in front of me, so I pay the extra $30 to get a hard copy. The enhanced, which is 120, which is all of that plus MUFON TV, which is pretty much old symposium videos, presentations, and stuff with a lot of good information on that. You also are able to stream the annual symposiums. You don't have to go there. You can actually just watch it from home, which is nice. Then you also get, if you do the yearly membership, UFO Crash Retrievals of the Third Kind, which is an ebook by Michael Schratt. It's actually really interesting. The VIP obviously is all that stuff, plus more, a hat, mouse pad, book from their collection, a tumbler, stylus, all kinds of different things, which is $300 a year, or the researcher, which is all of that plus Project Aquarius. So as you can see, that's $100 difference between the VIP and the researcher. So if you really want to go that route, just do the VIP and then pay the extra 50 bucks. The Project Aquarius, eventually, from what I understand, will go to $100, but right now it's only at 50. And that's what the e-journal looks like this month. Speaking of Northland MUFON Insiders membership, which I was just talking about, right now, our webpage, the northlandmufon.com, the Insiders page is open to everybody. You don't need a subscription or whatever to be on that. And on the Insiders page, that's where you're going to get links to the Zoom meetings and all kinds of other information. There's also stuff on the, not only do you have links to the Northland MUFON, we have links to the Minnesota MUFON meetings. I'm also just recently came back from Minneapolis. Bob Schultz has been with MUFON for a long time. He was a TV producer and directed a lot of different UFO shows. He was also at several symposiums in the past and International UFO Conference, and was part of videotaping all those presentations. Well, he had them all on VHS tapes. So I went down there and got 47 boxes of VHS tapes from them. They're sitting at my house right now. I've gotten through one so far. I'm digitizing them and they're going on the website. They're going to be on the Insiders page. I haven't decided yet whether I'm going to make people pay for that or not. But honestly, if our donations stay the way they are or get better, then it's going to be open and everyone's going to be able to enjoy it, which would be awesome. So that would be great. Appreciate that. Well, why should I become an insider? Well, I just told you. Info for the next meetings. You get Zoom link, both Northland and Minnesota MUFON meetings. So it's a 2-for-1. You get access to Roger Quanda's book, Extraterrestrial Odyssey. This book was written by Roger, Craig Lang, and Bill McNeff. And this just chronicles a man that has done some amazing things up in Bagley, Minnesota. And April 22nd, 1966, I haven't been able to go to Bagley just yet, but supposedly there's a newspaper clipping of a UFO that went straight down Main Street. And Roger claims he was the guy that was actually flying that thing. So I haven't been able to confirm that, but plan on it. Should be neat. You get access to past meetings from both Northland and Minnesota. So we're recording this meeting. Minnesota also records theirs. I put it all together afterwards and then post it on the website. So if you aren't able to do the Zoom meeting, or if you aren't able to make it, you can always go to the website and watch the old ones. Minnesota MUFON used to do MUFON journals. And they go back as far as 1992, and there are a bunch of them, and they're all on there. There's sighting statistics, which we get from headquarters. Field investigator information. You got to be a field investigator to access that page, but and you got to let me know so I can get you access to it. And then, yeah, Minnesota MUFON does a monthly spot on KQDS in Duluth. It's supposed to be the third Thursday. It doesn't always work out that way. It's in the morning, about 8:40. But if you miss it, you can go on the website and you can listen to it there. So hold the phone. There's another reason, and it's huge, and it's exactly what I was talking about before. Bob Schultz, UFOs in the Paranormal Community TV and conference videos. CCTV from Sea Edge, International UFO Symposiums, Paradigm Symposiums, Paranormal Crossover. There's over 450 plus. Like I said, 47 boxes. There's about 10 tapes in each box, so about 470-ish. All these guys are on there. I would like to see some of these guys come and speak with us, which would be great. We might be able to get Grant Cameron. I'd love to see George Filer, Bud Hopkins, Charles Hall. I sent an email to him, but I haven't heard back from him. David Adair. I mean, all those would just be really great to hear from. Speaking of the website, we're always looking for new content. So if you've got something, want to write an article for it, or just tell your story, or if you have a picture of an alien up close and personal, I'd love to put that on there. That would be great. And if you have any suggestions for the website, something you want to see on there, something that doesn't look right or whatever, you got to let us know. You know, I'm pretty much the guy that does the website. I'm not a professional by any chance. I got another guy that does that, but I can fake my way around it. The website belongs to all of us. And if you want it to look better, then we need to talk. you know, so we can make it better. So if you got suggestions, again, by all means, please say something, please. Are you interested in helping the chapter? There are plenty of positions available. Our chapter is relatively new. I mean, we just incorporated in July and had our first meeting in December. So we're still looking for a treasurer, a membership or marketing coordinator, a historian, a presenter coordinator, somebody that will get presenters for us, sponsorship coordinator. So I'm going to go out and maybe drum up some money for us from some corporate sponsors to help us get speakers and whatever other equipment that we might need. I was looking for field investigators, and the field investigators are not going to leave you hanging. We're really going to help you out. Charlotte's going to attest to that. I believe we helped you out pretty good. So, and we're not going to stop. We're always here for you. Being a communications director or assistant presenter, for me, I may not be able to make it here all the time. Catering coordinator for the snacks back there, but next month being at the VFW, that might be a moot point because they might have some snacks and stuff there for us. We'll see. And then an event coordinator, which help us get tables at conferences, maybe help us organize some community outreach so we can get the word out there, who we are and what we do. You know, I mean, I'm glad that you all have heard about this place, but if we just don't talk about it that much, then no one's going to come out. So keep talking about it. If anybody's got ideas for places you'd like to set up a table, you know, just for a few hours or something, just say something. Let's try to work it out. Let's try to make it happen. Oh, and Star Watches too, if you're interested in that. And anything else. Again, say something. You know, together we can make this a really good chapter. And the MUFON International Symposium, Battle for UFO Transparency in the Dallas-Fort Worth area at the Airport Marriott in July 11th to the 14th. I'll be going down there. It'll be a lot of fun. And tickets are available online now for that. Check it out. It looks like it's going to be a pretty good one. The symposium fund. So MUFON headquarters requires every chapter to send representation, which is usually the state director. That is not me, but that would be Anna over in North Dakota. So if you'd like to donate to the symposium fund to help offset some of that cost, it would be very much appreciated. You can do it on the website, or you can do it here, or just let Anna or myself know your intent when you donate. And that would be very helpful. Not a requirement, but very helpful. The extraterrestrial, well, we're not supposed to do that one yet. There we go. Joke of the month, brought to you by Michelle. Why have we not made contact with extraterrestrial life yet? Don't everybody speak up at once. Anybody online see anything, Larry? Fargo, anything? Why haven't we made contact with extraterrestrial life yet? Because they're searching for intelligent beings. And that would be why. Okay. So do you want to sponsor the extraterrestrial joke of the month? $10. Contact us on the website here in person or email northlandmufoninfo.com or at gmail.com. Or if you just have a good joke, by all means, please just send it in. That would be great. Okay, what is going, okay, so our newest segment, and we're going to keep this going, is what's going on in the Northland. It'll be updates on some older cases and introducing some newer ones. Now, I told you before that the CMS or the case management system is down. I was able to get some cases before it went down. So thank goodness for that. But there's probably a few new ones on there that we don't have, but we'll go through what we got right now. But before we do that, there are different classifications of each type of sighting. Headquarters sets up, does a classification when they send out information when they send it to the state directors to get assigned to field investigators. And this is the table that we use. There's 4 different types. There's an anomaly, a flyby, a maneuver, and a close encounter. I'm sure you probably overheard close encounters of the third kind. That's kind of part of it right there. And then there are 5 classes. 1 is just a sighting. 2 would be a physical effect. 3, beings. 4 would be like a reality transformation. Something just seems really weird. Or 5, injury or death. And thank goodness I haven't heard of any of those, but could be. So it would be like a type like a CE3. You know, the type is a close encounter and 3 is beings. Your beings were observed. So that's just what that talks about there. So case 134422, UFO flyby 1. And the flyby 1 is just a continuous trajectory. So that's all that was. Shape of a triangle, happened in Hackinson, Northern Dakota. Short description, triangular with 3 rectangular or rectangular with oval ends. There are 2 Air Force bases in North Dakota and 2 in South Dakota. Detailed description, I was driving from South Dakota to North Dakota, saw a triangular shape that had 3 orange rectangular lights that were at the base of the triangular craft. The craft is 3-dimensional with an apex. I was a passenger and we're heading north and it was heading south. I kept my eye on it until I could see it without sticking my head out the window. The craft looked like the one MUFON showed in their series. And I'm assuming they're talking about Hangar 1, or maybe even Ancient Aliens, I'm not sure. But the investigator on this one was Anna Scott, and she completed it. So, disposition, insufficient evidence. And why is that? Well, she writes that the sighting area lies between Ellsworth Air Force Base and Minot Air Force Base. It's likely that what the witness saw was some type of military aircraft. If there were forest fires west of this location, which there frequently are, the lights of the aircraft may appear orange because you're seeing the light through the smoke, making it look orange. The witness was unable to provide even an approximate date or location with any certainty. So because of this, I am unable to perform a reasonable investigation and am closing this case with the disposition of information only. You can only do so much with what you got. You know, if you can't really come to a conclusion, then that's okay. Nothing wrong with that. Case number 134035, which is a maneuver of the first kind, happened in September of 2023. Shape of other in Burleigh County, bird flock type. Okay. Detailed description says, last night in Bismarck, I looked at my watch and it was 11:33. I witnessed a string of lights, dim white lights. I call it a bird flock UFO. It flew south, and I'd seen this a few times a year at night. A few minutes later, I thought I saw a flashing star maybe, so I looked up the spot and it was a faint small cloud. And then it appeared that another one of these dim lights things shot out from behind it and moving in a south direction. Then I did see a stationary light that looked like a star, just lit up and dimmed back out. No witnesses with me. The previous night around the same time, I witnessed three light balls in a triangle formation in the same area, but headed at an angle southwest. And Anna Scott was on this, and she has completed it. UFO natural phenomena. So she says that the witness did not answer their phone on the agreed upon date and time for a phone interview. Like I said, you get 3 tries. If I can't get a hold of you 3 tries, then, you know, this is a two-way street. You know, I'm not going to sit there and hound you. Besides, if I hound you too much, then it's harassment. So 3 tries, and that's it. So they didn't respond to voicemail, didn't respond to email or nothing. So she's got to go off just what's on the report. So given that the witness reports that the object looked like a flock of birds and actually refers to the object as that, it is this investigator's opinion that it was indeed a flock of birds. This is supported by the fact that the general location lies within a well-known migration area for Canadian geese, which are large birds, white in color and fly in a V formation. The event date is consistent with their usual migration in that area, and it is also possible that this sighting was related to a recent SpaceX launch. However, since the witness calls it a flock of birds, I believe this is the most likely impetus for this sighting. The other sightings the witness refers to would require additional information to investigate and are likely also natural phenomena such as celestial bodies and or meteors. So I'm closing this case with a disposition of UFO natural phenomena migrating Canadian geese. Well done, Anna. Case 136314, CE1, close encounter of the first kind, happened in January 2024, so just last month. Circle in southwest Fargo. Light looks like there were, see, all I do is copy and paste off of the CMS, so don't yell at me for typos. Lights look like they were in triangle form. The detailed description, it was a view at night over a residential area, light with clouds with a humming. Sometimes the detailed description is not very detailed. So that's why you got to get a hold of the witness to find out what's going on. Anna is in charge of this. And Anna, are you putting Charles on this one?
Yes, Charles is working with me on both this case and the other case that's recent in North Dakota.
All right. Awesome. Good deal. So it's in progress. So when they figure that out, we'll find out. This is a picture that came with it. I think up in the upper left is maybe what they were talking about. The triangles down on the bottom, I believe, are just artifacts that were in the camera. All right, 134475 happened in September of 2023. A sphere up in the BWCA, Boundary Waters Canoe Area, but you guys all know that because you guys live up here. Multiple craft sighted. So at 2100 on September 5th, 2023, multiple objects appeared, then disappeared in the sky. Objects were sun-colored and brighter than Venus in the night sky, not washed out whatsoever by the waxing gibbous moon. Waxing gibbous moon, waxing means it's going away, gibbous means more than half. Object appeared in various positions in the sky, disappearing simultaneously and seemingly multiplying. At times, as many as 6 would appear in a cluster. After 20 minutes, they were gone. On September 26th, the following night, the object appeared again, briefly, performing what appeared to be replication, then disappearing after several minutes. Peter Collins and myself were on this one. We finished it. And this is not going to play now. How come you're not? There we go. This is what he saw. This is the movie that he made. So you can see the orange objects appear and disappear. They're kind of behind the clouds, almost looks like, or going in and out of the clouds. This is a view south from the Boundary Waters. It almost looks like it's in a line right there. And again, just kind of shows up and goes out. I think you'd zoom in maybe. That one there looks like it's in a line again. So is it a cigar shape? Is it, what is it, you know? Pops on and pops out. Any ideas? No, nothing. Anybody? Any in Fargo? Any ideas?
Well, I do, but that
Oh, yeah,
doesn't
we're
count
not
because
talking
I
to
already
you.
know the answer. So
Yeah.
no ideas here in Fargo.
Okay.
What direction is it?
They're looking south. Yep. Yep. So there it is again. Almost looks like it's in a line. Zooms in.
We
Yeah.
have one thought here, Chair.
And
Actually, we have 2 thoughts. The tops of cell towers or flares.
okay. Okay, so here's a map of the area. This is an aviation map. It's kind of hard for some people to understand. I get that. But the blue area is what's called a prohibited area. That is the Boundary Waters Canoe Area. It's a prohibited area because we can't fly over it. That's part of that. The magenta box at the bottom is a military operational area. So they're in the Boundary Waters looking south when they saw those objects. So IFO man-made objects, flares. That's exactly what they were, flares. And this one really wasn't that tough to figure out, believe it or not. Case 134475 was flares from F-16s operating in the Snoopy MOA, or military operational area. On the evening of September 25th and 26th, the Snoopy MOA was active that weekend with F-16s from the 148th Fighter Wing out of Duluth. F-16s routinely use flares in practicing evasive maneuvers to avoid missiles. By practicing over Lake Superior in the Snoopy MOA, the risk of starting a fire from those flares is severely reduced. These guys were up at, I don't know, 10 to 20,000 feet, give or take. And they're about 100 miles south of where the witness took those, that video. But those flares are so bright that you can see them just like that. So you'll see that happen a lot up here. You'll get some of those. I mean, the second I saw the video, I knew exactly what it was, or at least I think. Well, the flares only burn. Well, they just popped them again, you know? And so there's, I mean, there's several aircraft out there, and when they pop the flares, not all of them go. You know, they'll pop, they'll hit the button, it'll go a programmed, whatever the program is, 4 or 5 flares, and then, because they'll carry, I think they carry 20 flares. I won't swear to that, but I think it's about 20 flares that they carry. Yeah. Yep. And at 100 miles away, you're definitely not going to see the aircraft, but you're going to see those flares pop up because, you know, they're anti-IR flares, you know, heat-seeking missiles. They're going to go for that flare before they go for the aircraft. That's what that was. Okay, case 134475, September 2023, Severe and McGregor, small orb flew over me. So this person has a small cabin in northern Minnesota near the McGregor area. While returning home from a walk, he observed a dull metallic-looking orb, approximately the size of a bowling ball, fly across an open field over the road. I lost it as soon as it flew over the forest next to the road. I noticed no sound, no light, no wings, no propeller, just a round orb floating past me with no change in direction or elevation. The event lasted approximately 10 to 15 seconds. This one was really interesting. Obviously, I was the investigator on this one, and it's completed. So we got to talking about it, and I relayed a story of one that I didn't see, but I had heard of back in the late 80s, sorry. And then I showed him this footage and asked him if this was kind of what he saw. And this is all over the internet. You guys have probably seen this on the news too. That's Iraq. And it's a drone. Obviously, that's looking at all that. And it's just a sphere, just like a basketball, silver basketball. Yeah, right there. Just amazing. Okay, so this one's kind of hard to see. We discussed this particular case last year with Minnesota MUFON when we had some field investigator meetings. It's extremely difficult to see, I'm sure, but up in the circle area, you'll see a little white dot. If you zoom into that, this is what you saw here. Now, Anna did a lot of research with the witness and has done a lot. Anna, is there anything you would like to add or talk about on this?
Well, I will say that I was a witness in this case. So Jared didn't ask my permission, but I'm happy to talk about it. So one of the things that you see in that image is basically it's quite pixelated. What I saw when I was looking at it was something that looked metallic, and I would say it was a little bit bigger than a basketball, probably closer to the size of a beach ball. Now, you notice in this picture, it looks like something's hanging down from it. There was, at the time that I took this, and unfortunately I didn't save it to the cloud, but I had many, many pictures. So in some of those pictures, it looks like a string. Some of those pictures are 4 or 5 wispy things. And so, of course, your first thought would be, okay, this is a balloon. However, it didn't act like a balloon. It didn't move like a balloon. It didn't have any other characteristics of a balloon. And when I was looking at it, it was not very far away from me, and I didn't see anything underneath it. So it was less than, I would say, 100 feet away from me when I first saw it. And it was maybe 10 to 15 feet above the ground. And this thing moved at least 55 miles an hour because I chased it with my car. And then it abruptly turned and went up over the Sawtooth Mountains. And I chased it for 7-8 miles. Did not have any characteristics of a balloon at all. So this was on the North Shore. It was just north of Lutsen.
Okay. And like you said, the little wispy thing from underneath it there. On the Tic Tac video, the guys were talking about that they saw little wispy things coming out from underneath that too. So what that could be, I have no idea. But thank you, Anna. Appreciate it. I tried to give you an out there, but you didn't take it. Okay, so status completed. That was an unknown UAP. The witness is credible and calm. Oh, yeah. The witness was credible and calm. Witness described an object that had been seen many before and been caught on video. I just showed you the video of the one over the Middle East. And it's my opinion that the witness did in fact witness an unknown UAP. That one was pretty wild. Okay, so case 135743, EEQ, an experiencer question there. All I can tell you was in December, someone from northern Minnesota sent in an experiencer questionnaire, and that's all I can tell you on this one. The experiencer ones are as confidential as possible, but I just want to let you know that things are happening and people are reporting it. And then same thing with this one here. This one was actually submitted as just a normal one, but it turned into an experiencer type report. So that's all you get. There was 2 of them that got sent in. And that is what's going on in the Northland. Let's take a quick break, and then we'll be back at 5 to 3, and we're going to have Kathleen Marden. And I see you there, Kathleen. Thank you very much. We really appreciate it. She's going to give us a presentation, UFOs Are Real, History and the Evidence. And we look forward to hearing what you have to say, Kathy. Thank you. Back at 5 till. Kathleen Marden has spent most of her life seeking answers to the perplexing nature of UFOs and ET contact through investigation, research, and experimentation. She joined MUFON in 1991 and quickly became a certified field investigator and state section director for New Hampshire MUFON. In 1996, MUFON appointed her to the position of National Director of Field Investigator Training. And in 2011, she moved on as MUFON's Director of Abduction Studies, where she collaborated with a team of consultants to write the protocols for the investigation of UFO abduction, which appears in the MUFON Field Investigators Manual. So if you have Field Investigators Manual, you'll see it in there. In 2012, she founded MUFON's Experiencer Research Team, which is now the Resource Team. Over a 10-year period, Kathleen expanded her team from just 3 members to 45. And how many do we have now, Kathy?
We have, including consultants, I believe it's 70.
Oh, that is awesome. So yeah, it's all the way up to 70 now. 45 trained, seasoned specialists and attracted several PhD and MD psychological and research consultants. She is now the Director Emeritus of Consultant to the ERT and serves on its executive committee. In 2003, MUFON dedicated its annual International UFO Proceedings to Kathleen Marden for her most outstanding contribution to the Mutual UFO Network. In 2012, the Mutual UFO Network presented her with its Researcher of the Year Award. In 2015, MUFON dedicated its International Symposium Proceedings to her and her team for working tirelessly to help experiencers from around the world get the help they need to cope with the extraordinary events happening to them in their lives. In 2021, the International UFO Congress presented her with its Lifetime Achievement Award. She has appeared on as an on-camera commentator in 38 television and video productions. And additionally, she has spoken on innumerable radio shows and podcasts and has lectured across the United States and to audiences in foreign countries. She has authored and co-authored numerous books and articles in the UFO magazine and journal. And for additional information, see our website, kathleen-marden.com. Kathleen, thank you again for being here this weekend, taking your time to talk to us. We're looking forward to what you got to hear.
It's my pleasure. Today, I'm going to do a lecture on UFOs Are Real, the history and the evidence. So let me see if I can advance this. It doesn't, oh, there we go. Now you've already done the introduction. So I think the only thing that you didn't mention is that I've worked on 3 studies on nearly 5,000 ET contact or UFO abduction experiencers. And I'm not sure that you mentioned that I'm the niece of Betty and Barney Hill. And I was 13 when they had their experience. Betty called my mother the day they arrived home from that. So that is when my interest began. Today, I'm going just to talk about first ufologist investigations of the physical and circumstantial evidence, the major historical government studies on flying discs and the cover-up, and the recent U.S. government UFO and UAP studies and their findings. So the first section is on UFO investigation by ufologists and academics, a historical perspective. Here are some of the types of evidence that we look for: eyewitness reports and witness credibility, multiple witness reports, photographic evidence, radar evidence, declassified government documents, physical trace evidence, including electromagnetic, radiation, soil anomalies, etc., and scientific studies of the evidence. So let's begin with the first report that went nationwide in newspapers. This was the report by Kenneth Arnold on June 24th, 1947. Kenneth Arnold was a private pilot, and he flew to work. He sold firefighting equipment, and he was en route to sell his firefighting equipment in the Cascade Mountains of Washington. He was searching for a downed Marine C-46 along the way, and what he saw was something very different. He did not find the downed C-46, which had a reward for it. He saw objects that were like skipping through the sky, and he tried to identify them. They were different than anything he had ever seen. He determined that they were not birds. He couldn't identify what they were. You can see here one of his sketches. One of these crescent shapes actually had like a double tail on it. They were about 1/20th the width as the length, he said. And later he calculated the speed at 1,656.71 miles per hour, nearly 3 times as fast as any plane in that period. So what happened? This caused a big stir across the United States. People were very interested in this, but there were some ministers who talked to their congregations about how this could signal the end of the earth. And so the military thought they had to do something about this. So 6 days later, the disinformation began. Brigadier General Roger M. Ramey, who was the commanding officer of the Army's 8th Air Force in Fort Worth, Texas, and was also involved in the Roswell investigation not long thereafter, and his chief intelligence officer went nationwide on television and radio saying not to worry. It was only weather phenomena, no problem whatsoever. Here are 3 cases of multiple witness sightings. The Phoenix Lights, March 13, 1997. There were hundreds of witnesses across Nevada and Arizona of this, the row of lights with a physical background that looked like a carpenter's square moving slowly through the sky, very, very large. Later that night, the U.S. Air Force dropped flares and tried to explain these lights that were observed earlier in the evening across these 2 states as simply being flares. Then there was the famous O'Hare International Airport sighting right here on November 6, 2006. There were several witnesses, including the people in the control tower. And the FAA explained it away as a punch hole cloud. The only problem with that was that the weather characteristics were not consistent with the creation of a punch hole cloud. This was just another attempt to dismiss it, and hopefully no one would find out that it was impossible. Then there's the Stephenville, Texas case. In January of 2011, 300 witnesses of a mile-long UFO. MUFON did a thorough investigation of this, and but the U.S. Air Force said it was nothing more than fighter jets, which if you read MUFON's study on that, it definitely was not fighter jets. There might have been fighter jets in the air that came out to investigate it, but this was something completely different. Now let's get back to how the governor of Arizona at the time responded to the Carpenter's Square with lights in the sky observed by hundreds of people. His name was is Symington, and his initial reaction was to hold a press conference. There he is. And he has one of his associates dressed up as an extraterrestrial to draw laughter from the crowd. And he simply dismissed it that there was nothing to this, it was only flares. But then 10 years later, he came forward with a completely different story. And this is a quote from him. He said, "I am a pilot and I know just about every machine that flies. It was bigger than anything that I've ever seen. It remains a great mystery. Other people saw it, responsible people. I don't know why people would ridicule it. It was enormous and inexplicable. Who knows where it came from? A lot of people saw it and I saw it too. It was dramatic, and it couldn't have been flares because it was too symmetrical. It had a geometric outline, a constant shape." Well, here's some more photographic evidence. The top photograph was taken in McMinnville, Oregon, by the farmer Kent way back in 1950. Now look at the craft in the lower picture. This was gun camera video taken in 1957 in France. Notice the similarity. This is an incredible case in my estimation. Another photographic evidence case taken in Turkey from 2007 to 2009. So there were several videos that were taken. And this security guard who was right here on the coast, you can see he was a security guard at night. You'd go outside and look out over the water. And he started to see these unusual craft coming in toward the coast, and this was his location. So this is where he was. This is 27 miles out, 29 miles, 34 miles. And here's the UFO coming in toward Turkey, toward the coast. Well, over time, he purchased a better camera than he had been using. There were many witnesses who came and saw this as well. In fact, Dr. Roger Lear, who was known as the alien implant doctor, went to Turkey and actually witnessed these objects coming in. But the video footage was presented to Professor Adnan Aktem at Istanbul University Astronomy Department. And his immediate statement was, it was all a hoax. That was before he actually examined it. There was a photo analysis of this video. And then he made the statement, the objects cited in the aforementioned footage are definitely not made by any kind of computer animation, nor are they any form of special effects used in a studio or for a video effect. Therefore, in conclusion, it was decided that the sightings were neither a mock-up or a hoax. These are some of the videos. The first, the stills from the videos, actually. The first on the left was taken in 2008 at 3:54 a.m. You can see the outline of the craft, the bottom, and you can see what appear to be maybe a couple of figures here. Then from 2:20 a.m. on May 13, 2009, you see this again. And this video was sent out to photo analysts in 4 additional countries, the UK, Japan, Russia, and Chile. And every single one of those analyses came back showing no evidence of a hoax or a mock-up. They were able to grab close-up images during these photo analyses. And here you can see what looks like it might be a couple of entities. there's something, I don't know, it's not as clear in that video or in that video, but look at the bottom slide. And here we have some kind of an entity. I was very interested in this because of my interest in extraterrestrials. So I put these through AI on my own computer. And this is what I saw. Over here on the left, ET number 1 is very interesting to me. You can see that he has irises in his eyes. There are whites of the eyes. They're larger than human eyes. They slant up. I don't know if this was just a blur, if he was talking, or if he actually has this kind of, I don't know, nose maybe, mouth, chin. Look at how the chin juts up. Look at this thing here, like a pointed ear or maybe technology. It seems to be flat to the head, but there seems to be some kind of an indent here. I just found that very interesting. And over here, I couldn't get as close or as clear an image on this one, but the photo analysts called it a mantis type being. It might be an avian. It looks like a duck's bill to me, but it could be a mantis. Very large, dark eyes slanting back to the sides of the head. And again, what appears to be a headgear. It looks like a hat, but I think that it is attached to this that comes down, and apparently they are communicating, that words are being spoken. This does not appear to be telepathic communication here, since he has this headgear and this is coming near to his face. Now, another thing that we look for are Freedom of Information Act releases through requests for UFO documents. And my former deceased colleague, Stanton Friedman, with whom I wrote 3 books, nuclear physicist, early in his career for 14 years, was an individual who petitioned the government for these FOIA requests. And this is one that he always enjoyed showing. Deny in toto. John Greenwald Jr. From the Black Vault is having better luck with this. I have known John since he was a teenager when he joined the Mutual UFO Network. Stanton and I both encouraged him. Stanton encouraged him to engage in FOIA requests, and he has in so many that you'll find on his Black Vault website. He's done outstanding work in this field. He's written a book. He was even in some films on television. So he has done a terrific job in this field. Here is another successful FOIA request. I don't do FOIA requests. I specialize in other things. I find that I can't do everything. And you shouldn't try to do everything, because then you'll be a generalist without a lot of information about anything. But Grant Cameron from Canada, who is known for presidents and UFOs, presidential UFOs, did this Freedom of Information request. This was actually in my Aunt Betty's files. I am her archivist. I'm the trustee of her archival collection and her estate. I gave quite a bit of the archival collection to the University of New Hampshire to establish an archival collection, which is up and running so that people, researchers, can go there and read the documents. But this is about a case that I became very interested in because Betty knew Rear Admiral Herbert Knowles, and she met at Admiral Knowles' house with Wilbert Smith's widow. Wilbert was dead at the time, and this was back in the 60s. He died, I believe it was 1961 or 62. And it was his wife, Merle, and members of the Canadian military who would go and spend the weekend with Rear Admiral Knowles and with his wife, Helen. And this was after Betty had made and Barney had made a report to NICAP and to the Air Force. Admiral Knowles was known because his neighbor, Francis Swan, came to his house one day and delivered a thick packet of information to him. When he read the information in the packet that she claimed she had received from extraterrestrials, he said, "This is astounding. This is a matter of national security. There is information in here that no one of her level of education and knowledge should have. She's a housewife." And so he sent this packet of information to Margaret Chase Smith, who was the senator of Maine. She sent it to Dwight Eisenhower. And I have the evidence trail on this. But this is a Freedom of Information Act release by the director or to the director of the FBI. The FBI, the Office of Naval Intelligence, and the CIA and the Air Force became very interested in this case. I wrote quite a bit about this in my books, Forbidden Knowledge 1 and 2. Here is a close-up of some of this during the interview with blanked out. The contact with outer space blank stated that they sat in a group and be observed according to so-and-so, informed them that people from outer space could use their eyes and ears to see and hear. According to so-and-so, this is accomplished by the use of a mechanical device, and all conversations are recorded by the people in outer space. And it goes on and on. I only have an hour and a half, so you can get much more information by reading my book, Forbidden Knowledge 1 or 2. I think you'll like the second edition better than the first. The first is more spiritually oriented. The second is more geared to the work I have done in this field. So we also look for radar evidence. Is there radar evidence of a craft? And this is Dr. James McDonald, James E. McDonald from the University of Arizona. He started out as the director of the physics department, but he stepped down to assistant director when he developed an interest in UFOs. And he studied this for 10 years before he before he spoke publicly about this. He testified before Congress in 1968, and he said multiple witness visual radar cases were reported. So he was incredibly respected in his field as an atmospheric physicist. But when he started to speak out using very scientific data and mathematical calculations, he was dismissed as a kook. And this is what happens over and over again. He was no longer respected by his peers. False information was disseminated about him, and he ended up committing suicide. Here's more radar evidence. This is from Andrews Air Force Base and Washington National Airport. Major Donald Kehoe, who was the NICAP director, National Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomena, wrote in 1967. In 1952, the director of the Air Force Intelligence admitted more than 300 cases of radar tracking and visual sightings were confirmed by radar. In the ensuing years, there have been at least 2,000 additional radar cases in the US alone. When the full story of the UFOs is written, radar will prove to have supplied indisputable technical evidence, which finally convinced many previous skeptics. This case of over Washington, D.C., a very famous case, you've probably heard about it, took place on July 26 and 27, 1952, where radar operators at several airports, airline and F-94 fighter pilots sighted and tracked many unidentified blips or lights over the Washington area at various speeds over a period of 3 hours and 10 minutes. The newspapers reported on it. They said top scientists had been called in to launch a major investigation. The investigation concluded that this was only a weather phenomena, that these were not unknown objects in the air, that this was caused by a temperature inversion where ground clutter or birds or various things show up on radar, and that was their explanation for all of this. However, there's a different side of the story, and that is that these were highly experienced radar operators. Those radar operators had dealt with temperature inversion in Washington for many weeks during that summer. They knew the difference between unidentified, unconventional craft and clutter on the radar screen. So this became a big story. It became so big, and it went nationwide and across the world. In fact, there were sightings reported as far away as in Japan, all over the United States that summer, up and down the East Coast, that Major General John A. Samford called the largest press conference since the end of World War II at the Pentagon. Now, there were other speakers besides him, but these are a couple of the statements. You'll find the actual transcript of the statements online if you look for it. He said, reports like this go back to biblical times. We're not trying to discredit the observers. That's the reason that I said we have many reports from credible observers of incredible things. There is nothing else in the work that can do these things except phenomena. Something else we look for, especially as field investigators for MUFON, is physical trace evidence. And this is a famous case from 1971 that was investigated by Ted Phillips, he's now deceased, but he was an outstanding investigator. In fact, he collected samples of 5,000 physical trace evidence cases from 80 countries. Now, this case took place in Delphos, Kansas, when Ron Johnson, who was a 16-year-old boy, went outside just before dinner, and his mother and father were in the house getting ready for dinner, and he went out to feed the farm animals as any farm boy would do. He had his dog with him, and there above the ground, they saw an unconventional craft just hovering above the ground. He was so terrified that he and his dog hid behind a tree. And he actually made the statement that he was frozen or paralyzed. I don't know if he was paralyzed by this craft or just paralyzed by the fear of being in proximity to this craft. But when the craft finally left, when it took off in this direction, he saw this evidence on the ground. There was a white powdery substance, and it fluoresced. He ran to the house, he got his parents, his mother, took photographs of this, and then they went in and they reported it to the police department. You can see that there is some drift over in this direction. When his mother actually touched this white powder, her hands, the places on her body where the powder went, caused a tingling sensation and a numbness. So this was quite an extraordinary case. Some of the things that we look for as investigators is the soil inside the ring. Is the soil any different from the soil outside the ring? Well, probably the most prestigious individual who investigated this was Dr. Errol Farouk. He's from the UK. He's an organic chemist. He works for GlaxoSmithKline. He has had many publications in esteemed, prestigious professional journals such as Science and Nature. He took part in this study. MUFON's Phyllis Budinger did a study as well. She has a master's degree. She was worked for BP Amoco, formerly Standard Oil, for 35 years. And she did a study, a very good study on this as well. But Dr. Farouk said that the ring soil is extremely water repellent, like pouring water onto a glass plate. That was not true of the soil taken outside the ring, a few feet away from this ring. He mixed the soil with water in a centrifuge and exposed it to UV light, and it fluoresced. The sample contained an organic compound that could emit light when exposed to air. The chemiluminescent spray had created the elongated section of the ring that I showed you before, corresponding to the wind direction on the night of the near landing. Common causes such as fairy rings or fungus infections was considered, but did not conform to the properties of the ring. Now, the debunkers all said it was just a fungus infection, it was nothing more. But people who actually had PhDs and did the science on this said that it was not. He attempted to have his article published in Nature and in Science. They turned him down time and time again. He challenged them. Why? Why will you not publish the scientific report? They finally got back to him after he heckled them almost for a long period of time and said, look, we just don't publish anything concerning UFOs. It's taboo. Here is another analysis that's close to home to me. And this was the scientific analysis of my Aunt Betty's dress. You can see at the bottom, her dress was this color blue. But after she had her experience with the UFO and was taken aboard craft, she had areas of the dress that were no longer blue. They were kind of a purplish pink. The areas that touched the floor and the areas where these entities had wrapped their long hands or fingers around her, under her shoulders and around her shoulder. So the first study was done at the University of Cincinnati in 1977 by the chemistry department, and very long studies, many things done, but I'm just summarizing here. They said the white is strange in relation to its inorganic elemental compound. It's high in organic hydrocarbons. In the year 2000, Pinelandia Biophysics Laboratory did a bioassay seed growth test, and the seedlings developed at an unusually fast rate with water, when they were watered, with a sample of the dress that contained the pink powdery substance. In 2003, Frontier Analysis Laboratories, this is Phyllis Budinger's laboratory, did a chemical analysis, and she said the chemical analysis supports Betty's account of the event. In 2020, MUFON's lab did a DNA analysis. Ben Hansen and I were doing a television program, And we were at the University of New Hampshire where Betty's dress is stored. And we looked at the lining of the dress and we found these two spots in the area of her navel. Now, Betty reported that a long needle was inserted into her navel. So we wondered what this was. Could it have just been like a spill from something she was drinking that spilled on her dress in that area? And we examined the dress, and Ben used to work in forensics for the FBI. And no, it was not on the outside of the dress. It was only on the lining and appeared to be coming from the area where it had touched Betty's skin. So MUFON's lab did the DNA analysis, and it said it must be concluded that the stain came from the body fluids of the wearer of the dress. So could this be evidence that Betty's story about having a needle inserted into her navel be true? Could this stain have come from the fluids from her navel? Very interesting. In 2021, the University of Pittsburgh chemistry department did a study of the dress, and they found rare, expensive metals with a high melting point were on Betty's dress, and there was no logical earthly explanation for the presence of this on Betty's dress. So anomalous findings. That's mostly what we get, anomalous findings. Now, let's take a look at the history of major UFO studies funded by the US government, and did a great deal of research on this with Stanton Friedman. We collaborated together on fact, fiction, and flying saucers. So dating back in history, I'm not showing you everything. This is a little sample. You can read much, much more in our book. But on September 23rd, 1947, the Air Materiel Command issued an opinion concerning flying discs. It was written by Lieutenant General Nathan Twining from the Army Air Forces to Brigadier General George Shulgin, Commanding General of the Army Air Forces. And this is first page of a 3-page memo. And what it says is that these flying discs are real and not visionary or fictitious, approximating the size of man-made aircraft, extreme rates of climb and maneuverability, metallic or light reflecting, circular, flat on the bottom, domed on the top. So those people who are now saying that these things that we're seeing in the sky today could be our own experiments or from a foreign adversary ought to take a look at the reports from 1947. You can find this report in the appendix of the Condon report of the UFO, the scientific study of UFOs. This is on page 894. So next came Project Sign and Project Grudge. Project Sign began in December 30, 1947. There were many professional scientists and military officers who collected, collated, and evaluated all sightings that could affect national security. On February 11, 1948, this was assigned to the Air Technical Development Center. They analyzed and evaluated 243 cases, and they favored the ET hypothesis in the end. They submitted this to the military generals, and the military generals said, no, we're not going to accept this. And so they dismissed all but 2 low-ranking officers, and they started Project Grudge in February 1949. Their assignment was to give simple scientific explanations to the reports that Project Sign had evaluated but could not explain. The 1/4 that defied explanation were attributed to psychological causes. So another example of a cover-up. Here's the first director of Project Blue Book, Captain Edward Ruppelt. He ended up writing a book later on in which he spoke about in 1952, the ATIC had 4,400 UFO reports. Of these, they investigated 1,593. They did the same kind of analysis, categorizing them. And 18.51% were identified as balloons, 11.76% as commercial or conventional aircraft, 14.2% as astronomical bodies, 4.21% as other, 1.66% as hoaxes, yet 22.72% as insufficient data, and 26.94% as unknowns. They could not be categorized as anything known on this planet. That deserved further investigation, but it also upset the CIA, and the CIA got involved in all of this. So it was in 1952 that the CIA was taking a serious look at this. What are we going to do about this and the public? So they appointed H.P. Robertson, who was the chief science consultant to the CIA, to the CIA funded, he was to head up the CIA funded Robertson panel. It met from January 4th through 18 in 1953. They reviewed 15 cases in detail. There were many more cases that members of the panel could read about. But at the meeting, they reviewed 15, and he informed the closed session panel that their job was to reduce public concern by assigning prosaic explanations to UFO reports. He had this secret panel of scientists, and there were 4 scientists in addition to him. One was Thornton Page, astrophysicist, director of operations research at the office in the Department of the Army. Dr. Samuel Goodsmith, atmospheric physicist, chief scientist at Brookhaven National Labs. Dr. Luis Alvarez, radiation physicist, University of California, Berkeley, who later won a Nobel Prize in physics. And Dr. Lloyd Berkner, intelligence consultant, physicist, assistant to the Secretary of State. He ended up missing 2.5 days of the 4-day sessions. He was also shows up as a member of MJ-12, that alleged secret group set up by Harry Truman in 1947 to study the UFO problem and make decisions. Now, as you probably noticed, all of these are government scientists. They're all related to the government very closely. There were also other leaders of the CIA project team from the Office of Scientific Intelligence. I'm not going to go through them. I don't know if you can see the text. I'll give you a minute to read it. You might have heard of the name Frederick Durant from the Durant Report, panel secretary and auxiliary member. Also present at a later session were auxiliary members from Project Blue Book, Edward Ruppelt, again, Project Blue Book director, and Dr. J. Allen Hynek, Project Blue Book astronomical consultant. I'm sure that you're all familiar with him and his name and the work that he did. He ended up discovering that UFOs actually were real after he dismissed them on behalf of the government for many years. I don't know if I should say government. The military intelligence community is probably more like it. And then he formed the Center for UFO Studies. And also there was Dewey Forn May, the Pentagon UFO chief. So one of the cases that they looked at was from July 2nd, 1952 at 11 a.m. in Tremonton, Utah. Navy warrant officer Delbert Clement Newhouse was an aerial photographer with 2,000 hours flying time. He was making a cross-country trip by road in his car with his wife and his 2 children in the back seat. And his wife pointed out these flying objects just as they were leaving Tremonton, Utah. And they were much closer than what you see here. And they attracted his attention so much that he pulled to the side of the road because he'd never seen anything like this. And so he decided that he would get his video equipment out of the trunk of the car and set it up. And by the time he had accomplished this, these objects had moved off into the distance, but this is part of the video that he captured. He sent it off to the Navy, and it went to the Air Force as well. They examined 600 frames. The Air Force expended 1,000 hours analyzing this, doing a frame-by-frame analysis on this video. And they attempted to identify the objects as balloons, aircraft, atmospheric mirages, birds in flight, etc. They had no earthly explanation for this. Yet, Dr. Alvarez made the comment to the other scientists that this looked like seagulls flying off the coast of California. So what did they do? They sent this film back to the Air Force and the Navy for reevaluation. Dr. Alvarez had not done any kind of scientific evaluation, nor had any of the scientists. It was the Air Force and the Navy who had a thorough analysis, and this is what happened at the Robertson panel. In the end, the Robertson panel members stressed the opinion that UFOs should be viewed as phenomena, much as Foo Fighters during World War II. They recommended a debunking campaign that would reduce the public's interest in flying saucers through television, motion pictures, and popular articles. Scientists were encouraged to debunk UFO reports through deductive reasoning, and they started to do this. Dr. Donald Menzel from Harvard, who was closely connected to the US government and to the NSA and CIA, wrote his first book debunking UFOs that very same year. And they recommended surveillance of civilian UFO groups and their leaders. And there's plenty of evidence that that is taking place and has over many years. Then came 2 changes in US Air Force policy. First, to Air Force Regulation 200-2. And that stated, Project Blue Book will inform the news media on UFOs only when they had been positively identified as familiar objects. The names of the principals, intercept and investigation procedures, and classified radar data could not be revealed. All unsolved cases were classified. More evidence of the cover-up. Then came JANAP 146. It was actually on the books much earlier, but it hadn't been enforced until after the Robertson panel met. And it says, it is a crime for military personnel to discuss classified UFO reports with unauthorized persons. violators faced up to 2 years in prison and or fines of up to $10,000. It was a lot of money back in the 1950s. Project Blue Book, Special Report number 14, is the largest study ever conducted by the U.S. Air Force. 3,201 cases were examined in detail at the prestigious Battelle Memorial Institute. These are two samples of the same report, two different covers. One was released by Dr. Leon Davidson, prepared by him in 1966, the other by Stanton Friedman. But the report was a 1955 report. And again, the scientists on this committee categorized the UFO sightings. Everyone had to agree to that category before it could be put into that category. 14% were balloons, 25.5% astronomical phenomena, 20.1% conventional aircraft, 8% miscellaneous, 1.5% psychological, 9.3% insufficient information, and 21.5% unknowns. They did a chi-square analysis on this, and they determined that an unknown had less than a 1% chance of actually being a misidentified known. And among the unknowns, 35.1% of the best cases were in the unknown category. However, U.S. Air Force Secretary Donald Quarles made the following statement on October 25th, 1955. On the basis of this study, we believe that no objects such as those popularly described as flying saucers have overflown the United States. I feel certain that even the unknown 3% could have been explained as conventional phenomena or illusions if more complete informational data had been obtained. And the illusion was that it was 21.5%, not 3%. Then came the scientific study of UFOs from 1966 to 1968 at the University of Colorado, where 117 UFO reports were studied in detail. The project was headed up by Dr. Edward Condon, who was a physicist who worked on the top secret S1 committee at the National Bureau of Standards from 1945 to 1951. He worked at Los Alamos under Oppenheimer as deputy director on a phase of the Manhattan Project. He worked to develop radiation laboratory at MIT, the lab where America's radar development began. He worked for Corning, and then he was a professor at the University of Colorado. He didn't really run this project. It was run by project coordinator Robert Lowe. He had a master's degree in electrical engineering, and he had a top secret security clearance. He had a background in naval intelligence. And he wrote the Trick Memo, what is famously called the Trick Memo. And he wrote this to the administrators at the university to present this as some money they might want to accept from the Air Force to do this study. So the Trick Memo was discovered by the chief investigator on this project and was turned over to Dr. James McDonald, who I mentioned earlier. And what happened, what he said, this is just part of the Trick Memo. Our study would be conducted almost exclusively by non-believers who, although they couldn't possibly prove a negative result, could and probably would add an impressive body of evidence that there is no reality to the observations. In order to undertake such a project, one would have to approach it objectively. That is, one has to admit the possibility that such things as UFOs exist. It is not respectable to give serious consideration to such a possibility. The very act of admitting these possibilities, just as possibilities, puts us beyond the pale. The trick would be, I think, to describe the project so that to the public, it would appear to be a totally objective study, but to the scientific community would present the image of a group of non-believers trying their best to be objective, but having an almost zero expectation of finding a saucer. One way to do this would be to stress investigation of, not of the physical phenomena, but rather of the people who do the observing, the psychology and the sociology of persons and groups who report seeing UFOs. If the emphasis were put here, rather than on the examination of the old question of the physical reality of the saucer, I think the scientific community would quickly get the message. So that was the plan from the very beginning, and I have evidence that I put into fact fiction and flying saucers on meetings between the Air Force, Condon, and Lowe before this project even began, giving them their instructions on how it would be handled. In 1967, Dr. Condon made the following statements. 1 year before the project was completed, what can be learned from the UFO project can make valuable contributions of knowledge to atmospheric physics on people's behavior when observing them under unusual conditions. It is my inclination right now to recommend that the government get out of this business. My attitude right now is that there is nothing to it, but I'm not supposed to reach this conclusion for another year. Well, no, he wasn't, but the Air Force had asked for this, and he was willing to carry it out for the University of Colorado. These are his conclusions. Travel of men over interstellar distances in the foreseeable future seems now to be quite out of the question. It is safe to assume that no intelligent life outside our solar system has any possibility of visiting Earth anytime in the next 10,000 years. Our general conclusion is that nothing has come from the study of UFOs in the past 21 years that has added to scientific knowledge. Careful consideration of the record as it is available to us leads us to conclude that further extensive study of UFOs probably cannot be justified in the expectation that science will be thereby advanced thereby. His report was submitted to the National Academy of Sciences, of which he was a member. They rapidly approved his suggestions. They decided to give funding to social scientists to study the individuals who report seeing UFOs, to try to figure out what was wrong with these people, why they would believe that something like this could possibly be real. So in my opinion, the entire thing was a sham, although if you read the Condon study, there are some good scientific evaluations in that study. Now, the American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics review panel did a study, a year-long study on the Condon report. And at the end of a year, they issued the following statements. And these are all quotes. I'm reading except for the bottom one. The summary discloses many of Condon's personal conclusions. A phenomenon with such a high ratio of unexplained cases, 30% of the 117 cases studied in detail, should arouse sufficient curiosity to continue its study. And the bottom I have already told you. Okay, let's move along to the more recent study. The first congressional hearings on UFOs in 50 years by the House Oversight and Accountability Investigation of UAPs. Now, they don't like the name UFOs because I think UFOs implies that it's actually structured craft that fly in the air, just like Major General John Samford back in 1952. He preferred to use the word UAPs. It started with UFOs, it went to unidentified aerial phenomena, and as time goes on, it becomes more amorphous. They want it to be unidentified anomalous phenomena at this point. This is the military funding. So the study is headed up by U.S. Representative Tim Burchett of Tennessee, and he, as I said, leads the investigation. On May 17, 2022, the House Intelligence Subcommittee on Counterterrorism, Counterintelligence, and Counterproliferation officials said there are nearly 144 reports of military personnel about possible UAP encounters. 11 of these incidents were near misses with U.S. military aircraft. So here we have national security concern if these aircraft are almost running into these objects. These are some statements that Representative Burchett has made during his congressional investigation. There are plenty of videos of potential UAP encounters that the Pentagon can't explain away. I believe that if this technology already belonged to Russia or China, one of them would have already attacked us with it. In June 2021, the Pentagon released a report that was supposed to clear up our questions about the possibility of UAPs, but it was totally bogus. We can't get straight answers from the Pentagon. Our highest ranking leaders don't want American citizens to know the truth. The Pentagon and all our elected leaders need to do everything we can to destigmatize reporting on UAP encounters. The brass at the Pentagon will continue to be evasive, and the American public will remain in the dark unless Congress asserts its role as an oversight body and demands truth and accountability from defense officials and the rest of the executive branch. We became aware of all of this when the New York Times on December 16, 2017, in their column titled Glowing Auras and Black Money, the Pentagon's Mysterious UFO Program, by well-known journalists, esteemed journalists Helene Cooper, Ralph Blumenthal, and Leslie Kean, researched, investigated, and wrote this article. They mentioned how Harry Reid, who was the former Senate Majority Leader, led the funding effort for the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program that ran from 2007 to 2012. Prior to that, there was a different program, OSAP, that we've learned about more recently. But Luis Elizondo headed up the ATIP program. He was a military intelligence official at the Pentagon, and he worked for the Defense Intelligence Agency. So this was a project that had $22 million in funding out of a $600 billion defense budget, which meant $4.4 million per year for 5 years, secretly funded. The work began in 2008 under subcontract to Robert Bigelow from Bigelow Aerospace outside Las Vegas, Nevada. He modified buildings in Las Vegas for the storage of metal alloys, also studied the effect of contact on witnesses. He used MUFON investigators for some of this, and he made the statement, the alien presence is just under people's noses. Most of the money went to Robert Bigelow for expandable craft for space applications. He was producing craft that could be folded up, put onto a space shuttle that would go up and perhaps land on the moon, that this collapsible structure could be taken out and put on the moon's surface, sort of maybe as a space station. And then funding was withdrawn due to other pressing issues, but it continued under the Navy and the CIA. That was the statement made back then. Here are some quotes from Lou Elizondo. It is apparent that UFOs on US Navy radar are only the tip of the iceberg. For those of you who have not followed the information trail, UAPs exhibit the following characteristics. Flight characteristics vastly beyond our second-generation technology, instantaneous acceleration, hypersonic velocity, low observability, anti-gravity capabilities, transmedium travel in our atmosphere, under bodies of water, and in space. And now we come to the congressional hearings. And the first one took place on July 26, 2023. You see military officer Ryan Graves on the left being sworn in, David Grush in the center, and Commander David Fravor on the right. And let's listen to their statements. You may not have already heard their statements. So let's listen to Ryan Graves first.
As a reminder, please press the button on the microphone in front of you so that it's on.
Just move ahead slightly.
4 minutes, it'll turn yellow, and the red light, when that comes on, it tells you your 5 minutes have expired. I'll now recognize Mr. Graves for 5 minutes for your opening statement.
Oh, I'm
Thank you.
sorry. I pushed the
Chairman
wrong
Grothman.
thing.
As a reminder, please press the button on the microphone in front of you so that it's on. And
Members of the House Oversight Subcommittee on National Security, Representatives Burchett and Luna. My name is Ryan Fobbs Graves, and I'm a former F-18 pilot with a decade of service in the U.S. Navy, including 2 deployments in Operation Enduring Freedom and Operation Inherent Resolve. I have experienced advanced UAP firsthand, and I'm here to voice the concerns of more than 30 commercial aircrew and military veterans who have confided their similar encounters with me. Today, I would like to highlight 3 critical issues that demand our action. As we convene here, UAP are in our airspace, but they are grossly underreported. These sightings are not rare or isolated, they are routine. Military aircrew and commercial pilots, trained observers whose lives depend on accurate identification, are frequently witnessing these phenomena. The stigma attached to UAP is real and powerful and challenges national security. It silences commercial pilots who fear professional repercussions, discourages witnesses, and is only compounded by recent government claims questioning the credibility of eyewitness testimony. Parts of our government are aware of more about UAP than they let on, but excessive classification practices keep crucial information hidden. Since 2021, all UAP videos are classified as secret or above. This level of secrecy not only impedes our understanding, but fuels speculation and mistrust. In 2014, I was an F-18 Foxtrot pilot in the Navy Fighter Attack Squadron 11, the Red Rippers, and I was stationed at NAS Oceana in Virginia Beach. After upgrades were made to our jet's radar systems, we began detecting unknown objects operating in our airspace. At first, we assumed they were radar errors, but soon we began to correlate the radar tracks with multiple onboard sensors, including infrared systems, eventually through visual ID. During a training mission in Warning Area Whiskey 72, 10 miles off the coast of Virginia Beach, 2 F-18 Super Hornets were split by a UAP. The object, described as a dark gray or a black cube inside of a clear sphere, came within 50 feet of the lead aircraft and was estimated to be 5 to 15 feet in diameter. The mission commander terminated the flight immediately and returned to base. Our squadron submitted a safety report, but there was no official acknowledgement of the incident and no further mechanism to report the sightings. Soon, these encounters became so frequent that aircrew would discuss the risk of UAP as part of their regular pre-flight briefs. Recognizing the need for action and answers, I founded Americans for Safe Aerospace. The organization has since become a haven for UAP witnesses who were previously unspoken due to the absence of a safe intake process. More than 30 witnesses have come forward, and almost 5,000 Americans have joined us in the fight for transparency at safeaerospace.org. The majority of witnesses are commercial pilots at major airlines. Often, they are veterans with decades of flying experience. Pilots are reporting UAP at altitudes that appear above them at 40,000 feet, potentially in low Earth orbit or in the gray zone below the Kármán line, making inexplainable maneuvers like right-hand turns and retrograde orbits or J-hooks. Sometimes these reports are reoccurring, with numerous recent sightings north of Hawaii and in the North Atlantic. Other veterans are also coming forward to us regarding UAP encounters in our airspace and oceans. The most compelling involve observations of UAP by multiple witnesses and sensor systems. I believe these accounts are only scratching the surface, and more will share their experiences once it is safe to do so. In closing, I recognize the skepticism surrounding this topic. If everyone could see the sensor and video data I witnessed, our national conversation would change. I urge us to put aside stigma and address the security and safety issue this topic represents. If UAP are foreign drones, it is an urgent national security problem. If it is something else, it is an issue for science. In either case, unidentified objects are concerned for flight safety. The American people deserve to know what is happening in our skies. It is long overdue. Thank you.
So he has made public statements about observing these, that pilots have observed these UAPs on a daily basis, and has even made the statement that when we went overseas, the UAPs followed. I prefer the term UFOs, by the way, but that's what the government wants them called. Here are some of his statements. These sightings are not rare or isolated. They are routine. Military and commercial pilots are frequently witnessing these phenomena. The stigma attached to UAP is real and powerful and challenges national security. Next up was David Grush, who has created the greatest uproar, stir among the public, among the government officials, and at the military. He's been threatened. So because he talks about non-human biologics. So let's listen to what he has to say.
This topic represents. If UAP are foreign drones, it is an urgent.
Let's see.
Members and congressmen, thank you. I'm happy to be here. This is an important issue, and I'm grateful for your time. My name is David Charles Grush. I was an intelligence officer for 14 years, both in the U.S. Air Force, both active duty, Air National Guard, and Reserve, at the rank of major, and most recently from 2021 to 2023, at the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, NGA, at the GS-15 civilian level, which is the military equivalent of a full bird colonel. I was my agency's co-lead in unidentified anomalous phenomena and transmedium object analysis, as well as reporting to the UAP task force, UAPTF, and eventually, once it was established, the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, AARO. I became a whistleblower through a PPD-19 urgent concern filing in May 2022 with the Intelligence Community Inspector General. Following concerning reports from multiple esteemed and credentialed current and former military and intelligence community individuals that the U.S. government is operating with secrecy above congressional oversight with regards to UAPs. My testimony is based on information I've been given by individuals with a long-standing track record of legitimacy and service to this country, many of whom also have shared compelling evidence in the form of photography, official documentation, and classified oral testimony to myself and my various colleagues. I have taken every step I can to corroborate this evidence over a period of 4 years while I was with the UAP task force and do my due diligence on the individual sharing it. This is because of these steps, I believe strongly in the importance of bringing this information before you. I am driven by a commitment of both to truth and transparency, rooted in our inherent duty to uphold the United States Constitution and protect the American people. I'm asking Congress to hold our government to this standard and thoroughly investigate these claims. But as I stand here under oath now, I am speaking to the facts as I've been told them. In the U.S. Air Force, in my National Reconnaissance Office, NRO, reservist capacity, I was a member of the UAP Task Force from 2019 to 2021. I served at the NRO Operations Center on the Director's Briefing staff, which included the coordination of the Presidential Daily Brief and supporting variety of contingency operations, which I was the Reserve Intelligence Division Chief backup. In 2019, the UAP Task Force Director asked me to identify all special access programs and controlled access programs, also known as SAPs and CAPs, we needed to satisfy our congressionally mandated mission, and we were direct report at the time to the DepSecDef. At the time, due to my extensive executive level intelligence support duties, I was cleared to literally all relevant compartments and in a position of extreme trust, both in my military and civilian capacities. I was informed in the course of my official duties of a multi-decade UAP crash retrieval and reverse engineering program, to which I was denied access to those additional read-ons when I requested it. I made the decision, based on the data I collected, to report this information to my superiors and multiple inspectors general, and in effect becoming a whistleblower. As you know, I've suffered retaliation for my decision, but I am hopeful that my actions will ultimately lead to a positive outcome of increased transparency. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer your questions.
Thank you. Commander Favor?
So after he made these statements about non-human biologics, retrieved craft, UFOs, he was severely attacked. Attempts were made to discredit him. It seems that pilots who fly and see these objects in the air are safe. They don't necessarily undergo the kind of attack that David Grush has undergone. Here are some of his statements. The government possesses non-human biologics retrieved from a UFO. He had conversations with unnamed officials that led him to believe that the US federal government maintains a secretive UFO or UAP recovery program and is in possession of non-human spacecraft along with their dead pilots. So reasons why he has had trouble, why people have attempted to discredit him. However, Jonathan Gray from the U.S. National Air and Space Intelligence Center has confirmed the non-human intelligence phenomenon to be real and global, with hidden legacy programs within multiple agencies. And next we will move on to Commander David Fravor, who was the first pilot to speak out initially when all of this started coming to the public's attention back in 2017. So 16 years and over 3,500 hours of flying time. And let's listen to his statements to the committee. And let me say that they can only state what they have already been approved to state. They cannot give us classified information.
Superiors and multiple
standard debrief where the backseaters went down to our carrier intel center and briefed what had happened, and that was it. No one else talked to us, and I was in the
Have to back up a bit.
Incident that you were engaged occurred in 2004. What kind of reporting took place after that incident?
None. We had a standard debrief where the backseaters went down to our carrier intel center and briefed what had happened, and that was it. No one else talked to us, and I was in the top 20 in the battle group. No one came. The captain was aware, the admiral was aware, nothing was done.
Did your commanding officers provide any sort of justification?
No, because I was the commanding officer of the
Okay.
squadron, so no.
Was this incident the only UAP event that you encountered while you were a pilot?
Yes, it was.
Okay. This is for any one of you. Based off of each of your experiences and observations, do you believe UAPs pose a potential threat to our national security?
I think I went beyond, David, the statement that I intended. I have it written down here. I'm supposed to start at 39. So, sorry
Thank
about
you.
that.
Commander Fravor?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Congressman, Congresswoman. I want to first thank you for the invitation to speak to the committee on the UAP topic that's been in the news for the past 6 years and seems to be continuing to gain momentum. As you know, my name is David Fravor. I'm a retired commander in the United States Navy. In 2004, I was a commanding officer of Strike Fighter Squadron 41, the world-famous Black Aces. We were attached to Carrier Wing 11, stationed on board the USS Nimitz, and had begun a 2-month workup cycle off the coast of California. On this day, we were scheduled for a 2v2 air-to-air training with the USS Princeton as our control. When we launched off Nimitz, my wingman was joining up. We were told that the training was going to be suspended and we were going to proceed with real-world tasking. As we proceeded to the west, the air controller was counting down the range to an object that we were going to, and we were unaware of what we were going to see when we arrived. The controller had told us that these objects had been observed for over 2 weeks, coming down from over 80,000 feet, rapidly descending to 20,000 feet, hanging out for hours, and then going straight back up. For those who don't realize, above 80,000 feet is space. We arrived at the location at approximately 20,000 feet, and the controller called merge plot, which means that our radar blip was now in the same resolution cell as the contact. As we looked around, we noticed that we saw some whitewater off our right side. It's important to note that the weather on this day was as close to perfect as you could ask for off the coast of San Diego. Clear skies, light winds, calm seas, no whitecaps from waves. So the whitewater stood out in a large blue ocean. All 4 of us, because we were in F-18Fs, so we had pilots and Wizzo in the back seat, looked down and saw a white tic-tac object with a longitudinal axis pointing north-south and moving very abruptly over the water like a ping-pong ball. There were no rotors, no rotor wash, or any sign of visible control surfaces like wings. As we started clockwise towards the object, my Wizzo and I decided to go down and take a closer look with the other aircraft staying in high cover to observe both us and the tic-tac. We proceeded around the circle about 90 degrees from the start of our descent, and the object suddenly shifted its longitudinal axis, aligned it with my aircraft, and began to climb. We continued down another 270 degrees, nose low, where the tic-tac, or we considered 270 degrees to where, and we went nose low to where the tic-tac would have been. Our altitude at this point was about 15,000 feet, and the tic-tac was about 12,000. As we pulled nose onto the object, within about a half mile of it, it rapidly accelerated in front of us and disappeared. Our wingmen, roughly 8,000 feet above us, lost contact also. We immediately turned back to see where the whitewater was at, and it was gone also. So as we started to turn back towards the east, the controller came up and said, "Sir, you're not going to believe this, but that thing is at your cap point, roughly 60 miles away in less than a minute." You can calculate the speed. We returned to Nimitz. We were taking off our gear. We were talking to one of my crews that was getting ready to launch. We mentioned it to them, and they went out and luckily got the video that you see, that 90-second video. What you don't see is the radar tape that was never released, and we don't know where it's at, of the active jamming that the object put on an APG-73 radar, and I can get into modes later if you're interested. What is shocking to us is that the incident was never investigated. None of my crew were ever questioned. Tapes were never taken, and after a couple days, it turned into a great story with friends. It wasn't until 2009 until Jay Stratton had contacted me to investigate. Unbeknownst to all, he was part of the ATIP program in the Pentagon led by Lou Elizondo. And there was an official report that came out that's now on the internet. Years later, I was contacted by the other pilot, Alex Dietrich, and asked if I'd been contacted, and I said no, but I'm willing to talk. I was contacted by Mr. Elizondo, and we talked for a short period of time, and he said we'd be in contact. A few weeks after that, I was made aware that Lou had left the Pentagon in protest and joined forces with Tom DeLonge, Chris Mellon, Steve Justice, and others to form Two Stars Academy, an organization that pressed the issue with leading industry experts and U.S. government officials. They worked with Leslie Kean, who is present today, Ralph Blumenthal, and Helene Cooper to publish the articles in the New York Times 2017 New York Times, and it removed the stigma on the topic of UFOs, which is why we're here today. Those articles open the door for the government and public that cannot be closed. It has led to an interest from our elected officials who are not focused on little green men, but figuring out where these craft are, where are they from, the technology they possess, how do they operate. It also led to the Whistleblower Protection Act and the NDAA. There are multiple witnesses coming forward to say that have firsthand knowledge, and Mr. Grush just covered that. What concerns me is that there's no oversight from our elected officials on anything associated with our government processing or working on craft. Believe not from this world. This issue is not a full public disclosure that could undermine national security, but it is about ensuring that our system of checks and balances works across all work done in the government using taxpayer funds. Relative to government programs, even unacknowledged wave programs have some level of oversight by the appropriate committee members in the House and Senate, and this work that is said to be occurring from whistleblower testimonies should not be exempt. In closing, I would like to say that the Tic Tac object we engaged in 2004 was far superior to anything that we had on time, have today, or are looking to develop in the next 10 years. If we in fact have programs that possess this technology, it needs to have oversight from those people that the citizens of this great country elected in office to represent what is best for the United States and best for the citizens. I thank you for your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I know it's very.
So, I believe is very credible and outstanding. He has made the statements that it rotated. There was a fleet of them. It dropped from 28,000 feet. Well, he didn't make this one. This, what I'm going to read, is made by Dr. Kevin Newth, who recently gave a lecture on the UAP of physics of UAP at Stanford University. And he did the mathematical calculations with another PhD physicist, and they determined in their evaluation of this film that this Tic Tac dropped from 28,000 feet to 0 in 0.28 seconds. So pretty incredible. Near the end, it made a maneuver, and this is Commander Fravor's statement. Near the end, it made a maneuver. It's executed in a manner that is inconsistent with current principles of aerodynamics and possibly indicative of a vacuum environment. He made many, many statements about his observations when he was flying that plane off the aircraft carrier, the Nimitz, off the coast of San Diego. Statements by Commander Fravor: approached at supersonic speed, stopped at 80,000 feet, dropped to 20,000 feet, stopped 50 feet above the ocean. He used the word churn after that. And it was clear that day the ocean was still. It moved like a ping pong ball, accelerated at an incredible speed, moved in ways that we cannot, moved against aerodynamic rules, our current understanding of those, got within a half mile of the craft. It was tracked for 5 minutes. It had no wings, no rotor, extremely abrupt changes in direction, hovered over water. Every craft leaves a signature. This did not leave a recognizable signature. It was not manufactured on Earth. And more recently, there was another congressional meeting. I was excited about this. I wanted to listen to this, to learn from this again, but it was a closed session. The only information I was able to get about this is supposedly it took place on January 12th, 2024. That's when it was slated. There's been an argument now about whether or not it was actually on the 12th or within a couple of days of that. I'm not going to worry about that. Thomas Monheim Inspector General of the Intelligence Community briefed members of the House Oversight Committee's National Security Subcommittee on Capitol Hill. Lawmakers remain frustrated in their attempts to get more information about David Grush's explosive whistleblower claims. The military has made a point of improving avenues for pilots to report UAPs in recent years and work to reduce the stigma once associated with doing so. The Pentagon office dedicated to examining the encounters has received hundreds of reports in recent years. And the bill known as the Safe Aerospace for Americans Act would offer protections for pilots and civilians who come forward to report to the FAA. So I'm sure a lot was said, and we'll never know what that was because it was a closed session. And finally, we come to an end. These are my books so far. I did 2 editions of Captured, the Betty and Barney Hill UFO Experience. Stanton and I collaborated next on Science Was Wrong, which was then published in Chinese. I wrote with Denise Stoner, the Alien Abduction Files. Stanton and I collaborated again on Fact, Fiction, and Flying Saucers. Then I wrote Extraterrestrial Contact. This is a MUFON book. Profits go to the Mutual UFO Network. 3 members of the ERT specializing in various areas of study contributed a chapter to the book. It has been published in France, in French, and then I went on to write Forbidden Knowledge, personal journey from alien abduction to spiritual transformation, which is more of a spiritually oriented book, includes some experiments that I worked on, some personal experiences that I've had, that sort of thing. I then wrote a 2nd edition because there was a lot of confusion among my colleagues about that 1st edition. The 2nd edition is it has the same title, but it is a different book. It has many differences, some overlap, but it is geared toward my history as an experiencer of UFO observation, of contact, my relationship with my aunt, Betty Hill, information that the public doesn't know, also about the beginning of my research and investigation and everything that I've done in the field, including an unconventional, unorthodox experiment. So those are my books, and I want to thank you very much for listening, and I'd be happy to take your questions. I'm going to stop.
Thank you very much, Kathleen. That was really good. A round of applause for Kathleen. Definitely.
Thank you.
If anybody has any questions, please come up so you can speak in the mic. Yep, right here.
I see hands up.
Yep.
Eric and
Yeah,
Christine.
we got one coming up here just a second. There you go.
Oh, all right. Hello, Kathleen. It's good to meet you.
Oh, nice to meet you as well.
Okay. Hi. I was just going to question you about the hypnosis therapy and what they brought up through that and stuff like that. If you've done that even, I don't even know. I've seen some of your videos on YouTube and it's really interesting. Thank you.
Yes, I did. When I began my career, I had an interest in learning everything that I could about hypnosis. I spent a summer at the university reading all of the academic studies, wrote a paper. I received a small grant, wrote a paper on it, learned all that I could about hypnosis from the academic studies, and then decided that I should go on and become a certified hypnotherapist. So I did that. And I also have studied on a level 3 quantum healing hypnosis practitioner. I'm retired now. I no longer do it because of illness that I've had for the 15 months that I'm finally getting over, related to COVID and the vaccine. So anyway, if you do hypnosis very carefully, and I do, so that you will not lead the witness, that you don't feed the information to the witness, and the witness hasn't read a great deal of information, you can get a pretty good story, you might call it, or reliving of the event. When I do hypnosis with somebody, I use deep trance hypnosis. I do this because Dr. Benjamin Simon did it, and I had a great deal of respect for him. He's the psychiatrist who worked with Betty and Barney, my aunt and uncle. Others have used a very light stage of hypnosis. John Mack did. Bud Hopkins used a light stage of hypnosis. But I use deep trance hypnosis and very, very careful using forensic hypnosis, where I don't ask any questions unless the person has already mentioned something and I want clarification. What we've learned through hypnosis is, well, the only reason I will do or did hypnosis is because a person had some conscious recall. They had a fairly close-up sighting of a craft. They had conscious recall for this. They had an abduction. They had subsequent abductions and had some conscious recall of that. I work very carefully. Other people don't. What I discovered from the people that I have worked for as their hypnotist is that they're extraordinarily frightened in the beginning, that they're hit by a beam of light, that they are then absorbed into this beam. They find themselves on craft. Generally, for the majority, they end up on a table and they're undergoing experimental medical examinations. Samples are being taken, over extracted, implants inserted. They are finally allowed to get off the table, and they might be given an education. They might be given a tour of the craft. They might see the central core of the craft and the technology inside there, the consciousness of the craft. They might be shown images or visions are implanted into their minds. They're no longer frightened once they arrive on the craft. Generally, the ETs have taken control of their emotional state. The information that they're through visions or screens that they watch this on, they're seeing environmental disasters on our planet. It's a warning. They want experiencers to carry that information to the general public. The mistake is that experiencers end up without having clear memories of this. So some of them that I have worked with over the years are actually in environmental fields for work, but never even knew why they went into this. They didn't have these memories until later on, after they had hypnosis. So some people I guess, have carried out the ET's requests. They might be given information about advanced technology. There are some who are taken who are never put on a table. They have a different kind of relationship with these ETs. This is a smaller percentage. They have a positive relationship with the ETs. Chris Bledsoe has that now. Initially, he was put on a table and healed. Many of these experiencers who have fallen ill and they believe they've fallen ill as a result of their experiences with autoimmune disorders, with chronic fatigue and immune dysfunction syndrome, at a level that is like 37 to 43%, where it was less than 1% in the general population. Now it's up to about 3% because of COVID, post-COVID syndrome. People who end up with burns on their bodies, all sorts of, on the studies that I've worked on, we've gotten this information. People have come off the craft with burns. If you use a tri-field meter on them to measure an electromagnetic field, you might record an electromagnetic field around them when they might be standing a dozen feet away from the EM meter on the tri-field meter. So that's pretty interesting as well, but you have to catch somebody immediately, almost immediately after they have their experience. So, well, I hope I answered your question.
Awesome question. Really good. Anybody else?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
Can I go up there?
Yep.
Here you go.
Thank you. Thank you, Miss Marden. I'm curious, before I ask this question, is how old were you when the experience happened with your aunt and uncle?
I was 13 years old.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So my question is more about what kind, I mean, it's kind of personal, but what was the reception from your family? Like, was there backlash or was there encouragement? And then how did that affect you? I mean, it wasn't nearly as open. You know, the alien phenomenon wasn't as open then as it is now. So I'd just like to hear a little bit about your personal experience with that.
Okay.
Yeah. The dynamics of what, your experience.
Yeah,
Thank
I was 13 years old. I
Thank you.
just returned home from school in the afternoon. My mother was on the telephone with my Aunt Betty, and I could tell that something was wrong from her side of the conversation. Betty was concerned that she and Barney might have been contaminated because this craft was so low in relation to where they were the previous evening. She thought they might have been affected by radiation, gamma rays, whatever. So I immediately became interested in this. Yet, and the first thing I said to my mother, I think, is, well, we never learned about this in school. We've learned about planets, but we've learned that none of the planets are inhabited. So how could this be? But I believed my aunt and uncle. They were credible people. I had a lot of respect for them, as did the rest of the family. We were a close family and a supportive family of one another. So within 2 days, my mother and father, my two brothers and I went to Betty and Barney's house. And then I heard the story directly from Betty's mouth. My father sat in a quiet part of the living room with Barney. Barney was expecting a phone call back from Pease Air Force Base. And he did receive one that day. There were 2 phone calls with Pease Air Force Base. Barney, my father told me, clearly remembered observing non-humans on that craft as it hovered 100 feet overhead. And he was standing in a field in Lincoln, New Hampshire. We went outside with Betty. We looked at the new shiny spots on the trunk of her 1957 Chevy that had not been there the day before. She held a compass over those spots, and the needle whirled, indicating a magnetic field in the area where she and Barney the previous evening had heard buzzing sounds striking the trunk of the car that caused the car to vibrate immediately before she and Barney felt a tingling sensation passing through their bodies, and then their conscious memory started to fade. So this was really something for me growing up. We never ridiculed Betty and Barney. Maybe some of the family did behind my back, but I wasn't aware of it. We weren't supposed to do that to other family members. They could be different than us, but we could not ridicule them. They were family. And I would have no reason to ridicule Betty and Barney, although I would for some other family members. So anyway, as time went on, this was investigated, of course, by NICAP. After they reported to Pease Air Force Base and NICAP. And then I had the opportunity to meet all of these different investigators who came out. That Betty and Barney would bring them to my grandparents' house in Kingston. I grew up across the street from my grandparents. And so that was quite extraordinary to see these investigators in action. I don't believe I ever met Alan Hynek. I met Jacques Vallée. Let me think who else. Dr. James Harder. Of course, Stanton Friedman, but that came later. And other investigators, lesser known, Walter Webb, for example, who was the original investigator on the case. And in fact, when I was doing my investigation of their case, which started the formal investigation in 1991, I interviewed Walter Webb and got some of his records on the case that were not in Betty's files. So was very, very interesting. And as time went on, you talked about Betty calling in UFOs. I don't know if she was the first one to do a CE5 experiment or not, but a team of scientists who were working on this case quietly asked Betty and Barney to participate in a contact experiment. They called it a biophysics experiment. No, a psychophysics experiment. And so Betty, being the primary subject, would go outside, and these scientists would give her a script to try to telepathically communicate to these ETs. And she was supposed to give them the number of days into our year when they should show themselves, the longitude, the latitude of the area, and more specific information. And then the scientists would go out and they would look for the craft. And sometimes they saw craft, sometimes they didn't. She also tried to call in craft to land on my grandparents' farm and in the area. So I'm sure you've heard about the incident at Exeter that happened in 1965. All of these UFOs, a flurry of UFOs in southern New Hampshire. Betty was doing her experiments in this time frame. And all these UFO sightings were seen, and no one knew about her experiments. Now, one came in and landed on my grandparents' farm. It left physical trace evidence. My grandmother saw it coming in. One of our neighbors, who was a commercial pilot, was returning home from work, and he saw the craft coming in for a landing. It was investigated, and physical trace evidence was there. This was a big thing as well. So I was there along every step of the way. This case was supposed to remain confidential. Betty and Barney had a reputation in the state for their political activities. And of course, they were an interracial couple. And there was no positive reason why they would ever want this story to be made public. But a Boston newspaper reporter spoke to the wife of a Navy officer who knew about this case and had met with Betty and Barney. And she told this newspaper reporter about this. He went on and he interviewed other people. He went to NICAP He received information. He received information from the Air Force, and he ended up writing articles that appeared on the front page of the Boston Traveler for 5 consecutive days in 1965, October of 1965. And this created a family crisis. This was a terrible thing. Betty and Barney thought they were going to lose their jobs, their reputations. They had excellent reputations. We met as a family and decided where we should go from there. Some members of the family were extraordinarily distressed. They thought that this would impact the entire family. And in a way, it has. And I know I wouldn't be speaking to you today if it hadn't impacted me so greatly. We made the decision as a family that Betty and Barney should talk about their UFO sighting. And so they did a few days later at the Unitarian Church in Dover, New Hampshire. They were introduced by the public information officer from Pease Air Force Base, who introduced the topic, said that they had had many reports of UFOs in the area. And then Betty and Barney spoke about the sighting. They didn't speak about what was revealed under hypnosis during their sessions with Dr. Benjamin Simon, that was 6 months of sessions. I have the audio tapes of those sessions, and I've transcribed them. I've listened to them over and over again. I probably memorized them by now. So I had, as time went on, increasing activity, investigation, research into this case. I wanted to learn everything that I could possibly learn about it.
That's awesome. And we're going to have you back and talk about that case. I think that would be really neat.
I'd be
For
happy.
sure. Yep. We have a question on chat. It says, okay, for Kathleen, near the end of Captured, Betty's attempts at communicating with aliens telepathically, does MUFON advocate members attempt reaching out to make contact this way? Have there been other successful experiments besides Betty's?
I'm not aware that MUFON has advocated this. This is probably in the unorthodox part of ufology. Individuals I know have done it. Many individuals have conducted CE5 experiments, and they have done so successfully. So MUFON's more conservative on an official level. But what individuals in the organization do privately is their own business, as long as they don't speak about it officially as part of MUFON.
All right. Looks like Anna has a question.
Hi, Anna.
Hi, Kathy. I'm here in Fargo with our group. First of all, before I get to my question, I just wanted to again say thank you so much for your presentation today. It was absolutely wonderful, and we're so glad to have you. And I'm just really, really happy that you're doing well enough to do this kind of stuff.
Thank you so much. And it's just wonderful to see you and see you on the ERT as well.
Indeed, for both of us, I think the ERT is so important, and I'm so glad that and privileged to be on it. But I'm so glad that you started that. I think it's just a very beneficial thing for our experiencers.
Well, I'm so pleased that MUFON asked me to form that group.
So my question for you today is, with all of the recent whistleblowers and government discussion and congressional hearings and all of that at a more government level, is there anything in there that you personally feel validates your experiences or your research, and not necessarily validating yourself for other people, but just personally? Is there anything that really speaks to you and says, oh, okay, finally, there's some disclosure about X, Y, or Z?
Well, as you know, I specialize in alien abduction, ET contact, that sort of thing. So, David Grosh's statements really had a positive impact on me. I know that people have tried to discredit him, saying that he's psychologically disturbed. He did have PTSD after he came back from Afghanistan. Lots of people do. That's war is not nice. It's not good for the human condition. Of course, you'll have traumatic stress. But Gary Nolan is another one. I have the utmost respect for Gary Nolan and the research that he is doing. And now I just today found out about an organization, committee, whatever it is, that's at Stanford University, where various professors are meeting to actually do a scientific evaluation of the evidence. So I'm really excited that PhD academics are working on this, because, let's face it, they have more credibility than people like me. I mean, I feel I'm credible. I've done my research. I've done a lot of work in this field. But if I were a university professor of physics, I would be more credible than I am now. So yes, I'm thrilled about this. I'm thrilled about the military officers who are coming forward. I know military officers who have actually been abducted, who want to come forward. They're just waiting. They don't want retribution from the military and the military pushback, but we'll see if they have the opportunity to come forward.
All right, awesome. I believe Chris Harmon has his hand up.
Yes.
Chris, you can go ahead and
Another
unmute
member
yourself.
of the ERT. Hi, Chris. Chris, you're muted. Okay.
I want to say how great this presentation was. It was fantastic, and I want to say good job.
Thank you so much, Chris. I put a lot of time and effort into this presentation. I'm hoping to have the opportunity to give it at a conference.
That would be great. It looks like you put a lot of effort into it for sure. Anybody else? Any questions? Any questions in Fargo?
Lou.
You got a question? We got one here. Okay, hang on.
Hello?
Yeah, hang on, Lou.
Oh, am I up?
I guess you're next, Lou.
Oh, looks like I'm next.
Yep, you're next. Go ahead.
Okay, Kathleen, thank you. Thank you so much. And I was wondering, you mentioned Betty was involved in an experiment,
Yes.
call in UFOs, and I was wondering, I've read a lot of other close encounter with people, and afterwards they have enhanced psychic abilities. Did that ever occur with Barney or Betty? Did they have a sense of things that they didn't have before?
Well, from my research, I find that it takes time and that this occurs over time. Betty and Barney definitely underwent some of the characteristics that experiencers have. Like Betty is sending telepathic communication. You might say that's a psychic ability because she was able to connect, apparently, with these non-humans. But in terms of foreseeing the future, not much of that came to her. Once in a while, she would have a vision of a catastrophe that would come true. But she didn't become a psychic, just probably more intuitive. I really don't know about Barney. He died in 1969 from a massive cerebral hemorrhage. After this experience, he and Betty had a different view of themselves in the world, that they were members of the population of a world, not seeing themselves anymore as people in, this small community and in a nationalistic way or anything like that. They reached out to other populations around the world with funding to feed, to give medical care, to that sort of thing, to less fortunate people. They did more work in the civil rights movement. after this. Barney was appointed to the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights as a representative for the state of New Hampshire. He marched with Martin Luther King. So much more active in civil rights, as was Betty, and community affairs too. They used funds from the U.S. Office of Economic Opportunity. Barney actually received an award from Sergeant Shriver for setting up the Rockingham County Community Action Program with a team of people from Rockingham County. And Barney and Betty helped with this too, but Barney headed it up. Barney was on the NAACP, on the regional board of the NAACP. He was legal redress to the local board. So, you know, a lot more community activity than they had previously. So I think that perhaps that was an effect of their experience with these non-humans.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, we're running short on time, so Lou, you get the last question, my friend.
Okay, well, thank you for your presentation. It's very interesting.
Welcome.
I've been interested in UFOs since 1947. Thought we'd know something by now, but don't you think, in light of the recent hearings and the whistleblowers and all that, the government's just going to double down on national security and classified information, and we'll never know the nuts and bolts of it?
That's what the Pentagon is trying to do. That's really what they're trying to do. You know the history. They've always done it. I think that they're pushing to continue to do it. I don't know how far Congress will get, but they're searching for answers. They're trying their hardest. It's different when they met 50 years ago, when certain PhDs gave reports. They had written papers. They addressed Congress with these papers, and some of them, like Donald Menzel, were skeptics who gave even false information, and others gave accurate information then. So Congress is taking a different kind of look. They've seen the evidence. They are more willing to examine the evidence. So I'm hoping that this will continue to be funded, and Congress will continue its own investigation with immunity to military witnesses who are willing to come forward.
Awesome, thank you. Are you good, Lou?
Yep. Thank you.
All right, awesome. Thank you, Kathleen, very much. Again, we'd love to have you back. Maybe towards the end of the year or something, talk about Betty and Barney.
Yeah, thank you so much. I enjoyed it. Great to talk with all of you, and thank you for coming.
Awesome, great.
Okay.
Everybody in Fargo, we'll see you next month. Everybody online, see you next month. Everybody here in Rapids, next month we will be at the VFW. Other than that, y'all take care. See you next month.
Oh, apple pie. That's a good scrimshaw. Really? And you're still here. Meeting's over. Feel free to go home. Just leave. Ooh, Betty's interview with the leader.